What's up, guys? Welcome to a wildfire episode. So I had originally planned, I had a bunch of camping photography trips planned for the next couple of weeks actually, but all three of the places that I wanted to go to here in New Mexico are currently being burned to the ground by wildfires. So very, very thankful that I have a studio right now. So let's jump right in. I got a question from a comment. I'm gonna read through the comment, but basically it comes down to R6 II versus R5. And it's a sentiment that I see a lot lately, especially, three years later with the R5 having been out. Is it still relevant? Is it still worth it? I'm going to take a look at that. I'm going to read this guy's question because this is what prompted my train of thought here, and then we're going to go over it. Someone who loves bird photography, current dilemma between the two R5. The R5 will give me extra reach and crop mode, higher megapixels, versus the R6 Mark II, which has amazing autofocus. Initially, I was considering the R5, but due to your video on the R6 and its amazing autofocus capabilities, the ability to crop a decent amount with the 24 megapixels, that made me a bit confused. There have been instances where the price of the R5 has not been too far from that of an R6 plus a 1.4 teleconverter. A little bit of difference there. I think I already know your answer, but allow me to ask you this. If you had to pick one body with the 1 to 500, that's specific, would you pick an R6 II or the R5? So that's an incredibly difficult question to answer, especially from my standpoint, because I already have both of these cameras. So I'm very fortunate that I don't have to pick. I can use whichever one that I think will work for me. But if I didn't have these cameras, then I would ask myself, well, what lenses do I have? And right now I also am fortunate enough to have the 1 to 500 and the 800. So if I want an 800, I have that reach. Then you also have to take into consideration what type of photography I do. I do all photography. There isn't a genre of photography that I don't do except for weddings and newborns. Don't do those anymore. But everything else, landscape, astro, time lapses, wildlife, portraits, commercial sports, action, video, all of that stuff. I do all of it. So that's finding one body to, well, first of all, I can't get by with one body. I have to have multiple bodies. So we don't even need to get into my needs versus everybody else's needs because we're all different. But let's look at specifically the R5 versus the R6 Mark II. I've talked about this in a lot of other videos, and I've also talked about the R5 versus the R6 when they both originally came out. And all of those videos, all of those arguments, all of those points, thoughts, 2 cents, whatever, they all still stand. Let's stick with wildlife for a second. If we're talking about just wildlife, what's the draw of the R5 in 2023? It's the megapixels. Most people, I think, would say that's it. It's the megapixels because the R6 Mark II is better in so many ways, as is the R3. And by extension, the R8 and the R7 with, a bunch of different reasons, mostly including the autofocus system. It's better on all of those than the R5. With the exception of the R7, technically it's a better autofocus system, but technically it's not. And I've made a lot of videos about that too. We're not going to get into that here. So basically, like pointed out in the question here, is that you seemingly have megapixels versus autofocus. And I have personally always championed autofocus, at least in terms of what I need and what I want, because there's been plenty of times where I have picked a lower megapixel camera for my personal use over a higher megapixel camera, like back when I used to have a 1DX Mark II and a 5D Mark IV. The 5D4 had more megapixels, but I usually for wildlife found myself gravitating towards the 1DX2 because of the sensor was just absolutely beautiful and the autofocus was just better. And currently I have an R5, an R6 original, and the R6 Mark II. And I still regularly choose my R5 as my main body. And it's not just because of the megapixels. I will say that the megapixels is like the top of Mount Olympus in terms of camera wildlife stuff. I think it's just what so many people are obsessed with, and rightly so, especially for wildlife. More megapixels is more often than not amazing. And I say that because I have my R5 and I love my R5. I love putting it in crop mode. I love getting that extra effective reach and still, turning my 1 to 500 into an 800 f7.1 instead of going to my 800 f11 and still being able to come out in crop mode with 18 plus megapixels. I just talked about this in the last video that I did too. I feel like I'm kind of beating that horse to death, but the crazy thing is, like, not everybody watches every video I make. So if you didn't see that one, or if you didn't see any of the other plethora of wildlife videos, then this might be new to you. If you have seen all that stuff, I'm sorry. But let's talk about a couple of other things that I think still make the R5 very worth it for me. 1, 8K video. 2, the multifunction button. I've talked about that. I've made an entire video on the multifunction button and how I use it for video, and why, as a hybrid shooter, that's a game changer for me. And it is not possible on the R6, the R6 Mark II, the R8, nothing else except for maybe the R3. 3, all-eye compression, again, for video. Technically, the R6 Mark II has some better video features, which I love, and that's why I'm recording with it right now. And it's my main film camera, it's my main YouTube camera, it's my main camera for a lot of stuff. Anything that doesn't require 8K. The R6 Mark II is my go-to camera. However, I really wish that it had all-eye compression. So there's another point for the R5. Time-lapse mode, again, this is kind of specific to me and my niche, but as a time-lapse photographer also, having the highest quality time-lapses possible, being able to do either stills time-lapses in 8K or the 8K movie time-lapse modes, both highly, highly important to me personally. So the biggest downsides to the R5 though is, like, in terms of all the other new features and things, like, it's kind of being left in the dust, you know, with the new autofocus system. Like, it clearly isn't going to, probably, hopefully, I don't know, but it's doubtfully going to get the upgrade, any sort of firmware upgrades that are going to, you know, give it the same autofocus as the newer bodies. So that's unfortunate. Record time limit. The R5 still has that 30-minute record time limit. And as a YouTuber and just someone who talks a lot in general, as you guys probably will know, the 30-minute time limit is a bit frustrating for me. It's not always an issue, but when it is for sure. And I don't have that problem with the R6 Mark II. So again, another video-centric thing. Another bonus for the R5, or point or win or whatever, is for me as a wildlife photographer and as a videographer, the CF Express cards, the Type B, they're the fastest you can get, and they're much faster than anything in the R6 Mark II or any of the other cameras, except for the R3. And I really enjoy not having to worry about my buffer, and I really enjoy being able to record in 4K 120, another thing the R5 has that nobody else has, 4K 120. Those two things, again, huge win in my book. But the biggest downside for the R5, and this is one that I come back to a lot, and this is one that I think most people will end up dealing with, is the price. The R5 has not dropped in price, little if any. Maybe you can find a sale or a used deal for a couple $100 off or something, but it's still largely very expensive. Especially when you consider the fact that an R6 Mark II, which is a lot more features, a lot newer things, coming in at over $1,000 cheaper. Like, $1,000 is a lot. You could take a trip, you could get a new lens, you could put that towards whatever, you know, that's a lot of extra cash. And then for that difference, is the benefits of the R5 still worth $1,000 difference in 2023? I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with. That an R6 Mark II can do 99% of things as well as an R5, and it can do some things better than an R5. And it's $1,000 cheaper. But I think megapixels are, like, the biggest thing that people get hung up on. And that's why the R5 is still so alluring and still so potentially worth it for a lot of people. If you've been following this channel for a long time, then you probably know that I'm a big advocate of megapixels are very overrated. And I stand by that. And I know that sounds hypocritical, having an R5, but there's a lot of times that I don't actually get to use my R5. When we're out in the wild or whatever, if camera lady's with me, it's kind of her camera. So I usually end up getting stuck with the R6. And the more I go on with my photography career, and the older I get and the more I shoot and all of this stuff, the more I just don't care what I have anymore, to a point. Unless it's like seriously paid work, or there's just something I have to have for a specific shoot in a camera or whatever, then I'll gravitate towards that. But if we're just out and we're just walking around and we both have cameras, camera lady gets the R5. I don't care. I'll take whatever's left over. I'll take the R6 too. I'll take the R6 with its meager, measly, pathetic 20 megapixels, whatever. Don't care. And if I didn't post it in the comments or, you know, in the descriptions or the whatever, you know, in my images that I post, none of y'all would know. You would never, ever know. My clients never know. I never tell them. They never ask. It doesn't matter. If I had my way and I could afford it, I would have 3 R5s. You know, that would solve most of my problems. Okay, 2 R5s and an R6 Mark II, because I still need the video features for the YouTube stuff. But to answer the OP's question here, I think I would still gravitate towards my R5 over the R6 Mark II for most things. And that's just because it suits what I need and I have it, and I'm that lucky. If money was a concern, then I would absolutely not hesitate to get an R6 Mark II, especially I think the biggest thing here depends on not how much megapixels you need, but what lenses you have and what lenses you have the ability to get. If dropping down in price and picking up an R6 Mark II is going to help you get better lenses, I would absolutely say that's the way to go, because it's just having better glass is more often than not better than having a better body. And here's the other thing, like I compare these two a lot and I see them compared a lot, and it's like, yes, the R6 Mark II has better autofocusing and it blows it out of the water. That term has been thrown around. I've used it. There's been videos where I've been standing next to people with R5s and it's like, I never lose focus. I just don't. With the R6 Mark II, it's just incredible. And we have, as humans, we have this like all or nothing, this 0 to 100. We have this thing of tending to think that, okay, that means that the R5 is crap or that the autofocus is just like bad. No, it's not bad. It's in fact still a very competent autofocus system. And that's the difference, is it just because something is better, how much better? And that doesn't mean that the R5's autofocus in 2023 is bad. No, it doesn't have the bells and whistles as the newer bodies, but it's still 99% effective for what I do, for wildlife, for sports, for action, for everything. And it's still that good in 2023. It's nowhere near as bad as the R7's autofocus, which technically should be better. So I think the huge takeaways here are the megapixels, the 8K, versus the newer autofocus system and the newer video features, stuff like that. I think even in 2023, the only thing that's still holding the R5 back is price. And I think that that's been the same since it's come out. That's been the story of its life, is that price is going to be a big barrier for a lot of people. And the price for me is the only reason that I would not say or recommend it as the best Canon camera, because I do factor price into that. And that's why I still believe that right now in the summer of 2023, the best Canon camera is the R6 Mark II. And that's because it has a mix of all of the best features, some decent compromises or some manageable compromises, and the price. Oh, also the R5 is a little bit better weather sealed than the R6 Mark II for those people who care. I'm out here in the desert in a lot of dust, and that does matter to me. But that being said, I've never had an issue with the R6 or the R6 Mark II being in either dust or rain. So the whole point of this, though, is just to help you understand that these things are not black and white. They're not 0 to 100. They're not binary. They're not this or that. Everything is tailored to your needs, your life, your specific situations. And that's just, unfortunately, a lot of gray in between. It's just never that simple. So my goal is to help you be able to think about things that might not be obvious at first, and to help you to remember to take a look at your own life before looking at what other people recommend, because everybody's needs are different. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. I gotta edit this video and then pack for a trip to Albuquerque, a work trip for tomorrow, and I got a lot of stuff to do. So if you have any comments or questions about any of this, if you found yourself in a similar position, or there's anything that I missed or whatever, points, leave those in the comments. I will definitely answer them. I love seeing the debates and the community that we're building in these videos. It's amazing. You guys are awesome. If you're still here through all of the rambling, I really appreciate it. Hit that like button for me because that's the best thing you can do for the channel. If you love what I do and you really want to help support me even further, check out the channel memberships. It's an amazing way to help me out. And there's a lot of extra content and a great community over there as well. So huge thanks to all the channel members. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully at some point this summer, New Mexico will stop being on fire, or at least I can find an area that's not on fire. And we'll be back outside pretty soon.